Who is artificial intelligence really working for? Imagine this for a second. There is a company. A serious decision is made in the boardroom. Let's replace most of our employees with artificial intelligence. At first, it sounds like a brilliant idea. Costs go down, profit margins increase, investors are happy, the company's stock price rapidly climbs in value. The CEO confidently steps in front of the cameras and says, "We're increasing our efficiency. We're moving toward the future. With artificial intelligence, we will become more productive." From the outside, everything looks incredible. But now let's ask the important question. What if it isn't just one company doing this, but all of humanity? This is exactly where one of capitalism's oldest cliches, but one that still confronts us today, comes back into the picture. Because if people stop earning wages, who is going to buy everything that gets produced? Welcome to Financial Secrets, the place where capital, power, and history intersect. And the most important thing we'll realize here is this: nothing is as simple as it seems. Today, whenever artificial intelligence comes up, people usually talk about technology, smarter software, faster applications, systems that can even write code, models that generate images in seconds, customer service that never sleeps, digital assistants that never take vacations, and of course employees who never complain when the coffee machine breaks down. All of this is incredible. But I don't think technology is the real question. The real question is the economy. Because capitalism doesn't function by producing alone. Production by itself has no meaning. There also have to be people who can buy what is produced. And in modern economies, most people earn that income through wages. This is where the whole issue begins. If artificial intelligence disrupts the wage system, it won't just hurt employees. It will also begin to undermine the most important fuel of capitalism. You guessed it, didn't you? Yes. That fuel is the consumer, and the consumer is for the most part a wage-earning worker. There is an interesting contradiction within capitalism. Every company wants labor costs to be as low as possible when paying its employees, but when those same employees become customers, the company wants them to earn higher wages because it needs people who can afford to buy its products. A single company can replace its employees with artificial intelligence, and it can still keep selling. Why? Because the employees of other companies are still earning wages. But if every company does the same thing, that's when the balance gradually starts to break down. The system produces more with fewer people, but the income needed to buy those products keeps shrinking. At that point, this is no longer just an unemployment issue. It becomes an issue directly related to how capitalism itself functions. In fact, we've seen something similar before in history. During the Industrial Revolution, in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, mechanical looms, steam engines, and factories increased production to an extraordinary degree. Products became cheaper. Production accelerated. Enormous fortunes were created. But not everyone shared the same excitement, especially skilled workers. Because from their perspective, machines didn't simply mean more production. They also meant losing bargaining power. Watching the skills they had spent years developing lose their value, and seeing control gradually shift into the hands of factory owners. Between 1811 and 1816, the Luddites in England began destroying textile machines. Today, when someone is called a Luddite, it's usually understood to mean someone who is against technology. But the real story is very different. They weren't opposed to technology itself. They opposed the way technology was being used to benefit certain interests. In reality, the struggle was never between humans and machines. The struggle was between those who used the machines and those who owned them. And what's interesting is this. Even after 200 years, the debate has barely changed. What's different this time? Up until now, history has shown us the same pattern over and over again. Whenever a new technology first appears, the same conversation begins. It's going to take people's jobs. After a certain amount of time, some professions genuinely disappear. But better ones emerge to replace them. That's why many people are saying the same thing today. Don't worry. Artificial intelligence will be just like previous technologies. But will it really? This is exactly where things begin to change, Because there is one very important difference that separates artificial intelligence from previous technologies. In the past, machines mostly targeted human physical labor. In factories, in agriculture, on production lines, in physically demanding jobs, people continued doing the thinking, while machines took over the physical burden. Today, for the first time, something different is happening. Artificial intelligence isn't competing with people's muscles. It's beginning to compete directly with their minds. It writes, it develops code, it translates, it reviews contracts, it analyzes accounting records, it conducts research, it speaks like a customer service representative, it writes advertising copy, it creates presentations, it suggests marketing strategies, it plans logistics, it writes reports. It can even produce some of the analyses that managers perform. In just seconds, just think about it. For years, people were given the same advice. Study hard. Graduate from university. Improve yourself. Get a knowledge-based job. Use your brain instead of your physical strength. Because everyone believed the same thing. Knowledge-based professions were safer. But today, artificial intelligence has started knocking on the doors of the very professions people believed were their safe haven. That is why many economists see this transformation as fundamentally different from previous waves of automation. What do the numbers say? Now let's take a look at the data. Because sometimes a single statistic says more than hours of debate ever could. According to the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, approximately 40% of jobs worldwide are exposed to the impact of artificial intelligence. That's a remarkably large share. When we look at advanced economies, the picture becomes even more striking. There, around 60% of jobs could feel the effects of artificial intelligence. But there's an important detail here. Being affected does not mean that job will disappear completely. What the IMF is saying is much more balanced. Roughly half of the jobs affected by artificial intelligence could actually benefit from it. People could become more productive. They could accomplish more work in less time. New opportunities could emerge. However, for the other half, the outlook isn't nearly as bright. Hiring could slow down. Wages could come under pressure. The need for human workers in certain professions could decline significantly. Some tasks could even disappear entirely. So the real question isn't, will jobs disappear? The real question is, who will capture the gains? Research conducted by Goldman Sachs paints a similar picture. According to the study, generative artificial intelligence has the potential to automate a workload equivalent to approximately 300 million full-time jobs worldwide. It's difficult even to imagine a number like that. 300 million. That's more than the total population of many countries. OECD data is equally striking. According to the organization, the occupations facing the highest risk of automation represent roughly 28% of jobs across its member countries. Another OECD study previously concluded that, over the next 15 to 20 years, approximately 14% of jobs could disappear entirely. Another 32% could be transformed into something fundamentally different from what they are today. So this isn't just about job losses, it's about the very definition of work changing. The first signs have already begun to appear. Maybe all of this sounds like a distant future to you, but it really isn't, because we're already seeing the first signs today, especially in the financial sector, banking, professional services. Large companies have started talking about it openly. In the past, plans like these were discussed behind closed doors. Today they're presented in investor briefings. Companies are openly saying they'll need fewer back-office employees, fewer support teams, and fewer entry-level workers. According to Reuters, the CEO of HSBC offered an interesting piece of advice to employees as the bank prepared for layoffs. Don't fight artificial intelligence. Another major bank, Standard Chartered, announced that it plans to eliminate approximately 8,000 positions by 2030. In addition, it aims to reduce corporate roles by roughly 15%. While explaining this transformation, the company's CEO used a striking phrase: low-value human capital. Let's pause for a moment and think about that. We're talking about a future centered on people, yet at the same time, We're referring to those very people as low-value capital. Honestly, that sounds a little strange. As if we weren't talking about human beings, but about an office chair that's gradually losing its value. From the company's perspective, it all makes sense now. Let's be honest, if we put ourselves in the shoes of a company, it's not difficult to understand why these decisions are being made. If artificial intelligence allows one person to do the work of 5, automates customer service, speeds up accounting, makes software development cheaper, naturally the company will want to use it, because that's called efficiency. And one of investors' favorite words is exactly that. Efficiency, lower costs, higher profits, a stronger balance sheet. Executives walk into investor meetings and say, our productivity has increased, our profit margins have grown, our company has become leaner. When investors hear that, they get excited. But when employees hear the very same sentences, they hear something completely different. The employee thinks, am I next? The exact same sentence carries 2 completely different meanings for 2 different people. This is where the real problem begins. Maybe some companies genuinely feel uncomfortable about this. Maybe executives don't actually want to lay people off, but the system pushes them in that direction. Because if a competing company lowers its costs, and you don't, you fall behind. If investors reward automation, then executives are forced to invest in automation as well. On top of that, many CEOs' compensation is tied to their company's stock price, so every decision that pushes the share price higher also increases their own income. No one wants to become the last company that refuses to automate. And this is where an extremely important distinction emerges. When viewed from the perspective of individual companies, these decisions are perfectly rational. But when we look at the economy as a whole, the very same decisions can produce completely different outcomes. Because capitalism isn't made up of companies alone. Capitalism is also made up of customers. And the overwhelming majority of those customers are people who earn a paycheck somewhere. But what if everyone does it at the same time? So far we've been looking at things from the company's perspective, and to be honest, their decisions seem perfectly logical on their own. Lower costs, higher production, greater profits. That's exactly what investors want to see. But now let's zoom the camera out a little, because the real story isn't about a single company, it's about the entire economy. Think about it. A company replaces half of its employees with artificial intelligence. Great. Its costs go down, its profits go up, and it continues selling its products. But why? Because the people buying those products are still employed by other companies. They're still earning an income. The company has lost its own employees, but it hasn't lost its customers. That's why, at first glance, the system appears to work perfectly. However, once everyone starts making the same decision, things begin to change. One company, then its competitor, then another industry, until eventually nearly the entire economy follows the same path. And that's when a very important question emerges. If everyone is reducing their workforce, where are the customers going to come from? Because workers aren't just the people who produce goods, they're also the people who buy them, the people who buy bread at the grocery store, replace their phones, pay their rent, send their children to school, go on vacation, purchase subscriptions, eat at restaurants. In other words, they're the people who generate companies' revenue. Put differently, wages aren't just money that goes into employees' pockets. They're the economy's circulatory system, just like blood circulation. When blood flow slows down, the entire body is affected. Likewise, when wages weaken, the entire economy begins to feel the impact. This is one of capitalism's oldest contradictions. Companies want wages to be low when they're paying employees, but they want people to have money in their pockets when they're selling products. Those two desires cannot coexist forever, because what one person calls a cost, someone else calls income, and that income becomes another company's customer. How was this problem solved in the past? In fact, the economy has faced this kind of bottleneck before, and various solutions were developed to keep the system alive. The first solution was debt. If wages weren't rising fast enough, People continued spending through credit cards, mortgages, auto loans, student loans, personal loans, and the buy now, pay later systems that have spread rapidly in recent years. All of them served the same purpose, allowing people to keep spending even when they didn't have enough money in their pockets. In the short term, it worked. The economy kept moving, stores kept selling, companies kept growing. But there was one small problem. Debt isn't new money. It's tomorrow's income being spent today. So while it eases today's problems, it makes tomorrow's burden even heavier. Now think about this together with artificial intelligence. If wages come under pressure, and people are already carrying high levels of debt, then even relying on credit to stay afloat will gradually become more difficult. Governments may be forced to step in. This is where the second solution comes into play. The government, unemployment benefits, tax cuts, food assistance, healthcare support, housing assistance, economic stimulus packages, public sector employment, and the increasingly discussed idea of universal basic income. At first glance, these may seem like social policies, but they also serve an economic purpose, keeping consumption alive. Because when the private sector pays fewer wages, someone has to put money into people's pockets. Otherwise, companies will eventually run out of customers to sell to. Perhaps the most important question we'll be debating in the years ahead is this. If artificial intelligence replaces the paycheck, who will replace the customer? That may sound like a political question, but in reality, it's an economic one. Because producing goods alone isn't enough. There also have to be people who can buy what's produced, and those people aren't just statistics. They are the economy itself. The real issue isn't artificial intelligence, it's ownership. Everything we've talked about so far brings us to the same conclusion. The real issue isn't how intelligent artificial intelligence becomes. The real issue is, who owns that artificial intelligence? Because when we look back at history, we keep seeing the same pattern. At one time, railroads were the world's most valuable infrastructure. Those who owned them weren't just operating trains. They were controlling the arteries of the economy. Then came oil. The companies that controlled energy weren't just selling fuel. They became powerful enough to influence the fate of entire nations. Today, we may be standing at the edge of a similar transformation. This time, the new infrastructure is called artificial intelligence. So who controls this infrastructure? Who develops the AI models? Who owns the massive data centers that power them? Who manufactures the billions of dollars worth of chips? Who controls the cloud systems that companies become more dependent on every single day? And perhaps most importantly, who profits from all of this new productivity? This is where the entire debate truly comes together. Productivity is rising. But who wins? Let's say an employee can now finish in one day what used to take an entire week, thanks to artificial intelligence. That sounds fantastic. But what happens next? Will the employee earn more? Will they work only 4 days a week? Will they get more vacation time? Or will the company realize it can do the same work with fewer people and decide to shrink the team? This is why productivity by itself is neither good nor bad. What matters is how the gains are distributed. If every increase in productivity ends up benefiting only corporate balance sheets, then from the employee's perspective, technology no longer feels like a reward. It starts to feel like a threat. The old advice is no longer enough on its own. For many years, young people have been given similar advice. Improve yourself, learn new skills, keep up with technology. That advice is still correct. But today, it's incomplete, because simply learning new skills no longer solves every problem. An employee may become highly skilled at using artificial intelligence, yet their bargaining power may still decline. A freelancer may complete work twice as fast as before, but because millions of others are using the very same tools, the price of those services may fall. They produce more, but they earn less. This is one of technology's most interesting paradoxes. Productivity increases. Income doesn't necessarily increase at the same pace. What happens if the first step on the career ladder disappears? There's another risk that isn't discussed very often. Every one of us started somewhere. Our first job, our first internship, our first client. Our first mistakes. No one begins as an expert. Experience is built over time. Now think about it. If companies stop hiring entry-level employees, where will people gain experience? Today's senior professionals were once young beginners. If that first step disappears, who will train tomorrow's experts? Perhaps one of artificial intelligence's most significant effects will emerge right here, because if the first rung of the career ladder breaks, the number of people who can ever reach the top will gradually decline as well. Technology alone doesn't decide the future. Sometimes when people talk about artificial intelligence, it sounds as if technology itself will make every decision. History tells us something different. Technology points the direction, but people choose the path. The very same technology can reduce working hours in one country and lead to mass layoffs in another. It can increase employees' incomes in one company, while enriching only shareholders in another. The machine itself doesn't take sides. The system that uses it does. That's why the question that will determine the future isn't simply, what will artificial intelligence be capable of doing? The real question is, who will share the value that artificial intelligence creates? That will most likely become the biggest economic debate of the years ahead. Will artificial intelligence change capitalism? So, after everything we've discussed, what kind of future is waiting for us? Will artificial intelligence truly shake the foundations of capitalism? Or will capitalism, as it has done throughout history, manage to reshape this technology according to its own rules? The truth is, there isn't a single answer to that question. Because what will determine the future isn't how advanced artificial intelligence becomes. It's how that power is used. Today, artificial intelligence could bring a level of productivity growth that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago. Perhaps people will accomplish far more work in far less time. Perhaps costs will fall dramatically. Perhaps healthcare will become faster. Perhaps education will become more accessible. Perhaps problems that currently take years to solve will one day be solved within hours. All of that is possible. But by itself, it isn't enough. Because throughout history, no technology has ever distributed prosperity on its own. The steam engine didn't. Electricity didn't. The internet didn't. And artificial intelligence won't either. Technology simply creates new possibilities. Who benefits from those possibilities is something people decide. The real battle isn't productivity, it's distribution. Let's imagine that thanks to artificial intelligence, the global economy becomes twice as productive. That sounds wonderful. But then what? Will those gains be shared across society? Or will they become concentrated in the hands of only a small group? That's the real issue. If productivity increases while workers also share in the benefits, if wages rise, if people work fewer hours while gaining more free time, if public services become stronger, if education and healthcare become better, then artificial intelligence could produce one of the greatest increases in prosperity in human history. But the opposite is equally possible. Companies employ fewer people. Profits reach record highs. Shareholders become even wealthier. Income inequality grows. Wages remain stagnant. And despite living in a more productive economy than ever before, people feel less secure than they ever have. The very same technology could open the door to two completely different futures. What if people become economically unnecessary? Perhaps this is where the most uncomfortable part of the discussion begins. The danger isn't that machines become smarter. The danger is that people gradually come to be seen as less economically necessary. Think about it. Companies no longer need you as much to produce goods, but they still need you to buy those goods. They need you to collect taxes. They need you to maintain social order. They need you to vote in elections. So even if you've lost your importance in the production process, you remain indispensable to the rest of society. This is one of the greatest contradictions that artificial intelligence brings into the open. The problem isn't technology. The problem is how the economic system will respond to this transformation. History is actually showing us the way. When we look back at history, we notice something interesting. Every major technological transformation has also brought major economic and political transformations. The Industrial Revolution didn't just change factories. It changed working life. It changed cities. It changed governments. It changed workers' rights. Electricity didn't simply light up factories. It created entirely new industries. It gave birth to new professions. The internet didn't just make information easier to access. It reshaped communication, commerce, finance, education. In short, nearly every aspect of life. Today, we may be standing at a similar turning point, but history teaches us something else as well. No transformation has ever become fair on its own. Balance was achieved through negotiation. It changed through struggle. It was shaped by new rules. And there is little reason to believe this time will be any different. Then let's ask the real question. Perhaps we've been asking the wrong question all these years. We keep asking, what will artificial intelligence be able to do? But perhaps the question we should really be asking is, when artificial intelligence does all of those things, who will own the value it creates? Because what will shape the future isn't algorithms alone, it's ownership, tax policy, the law, competition rules, corporate decisions, government choices, and how society responds to this transformation. Artificial intelligence is neither inherently good nor inherently bad. It is simply an incredibly powerful tool. How we choose to use it is entirely up to us. Final thoughts. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the age of artificial intelligence will be this. Technology alone guarantees nothing. Not prosperity, not equality, not freedom. Those things have always been determined by people, and most likely, they always will be. So when you think about artificial intelligence, don't just look at the screens. Look at corporate balance sheets. Look at the tax system. Look at the world of work. Look at the structures of ownership. Because the story of the future won't be written by technology alone. It will be written by those who build it, those who invest in it, those who regulate it, and those who decide how the value it creates will be shared. Perhaps the most important question of the coming years will no longer be, what can artificial intelligence do? But rather, when artificial intelligence wins, who really wins? That is the question we should be trying to answer. And perhaps, that is the very question that will shape the future.